Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy, Nate Weitzer, on the East Coast. And we are kicking off the work week here on a Monday with an eight-game slate in the NBA. A few decent matchups in this one. We got, in this video specifically, we're going to be talking about the Kangs and the T-Wolves facing off once more after their first meeting in Minnesota that the T-Wolves won. Also have another game video and our player props up for you, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page so you can continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. You can check out everything we're talking about here and more on thelines.com and use that great odds finder tool we have. Make sure you're getting the best juice back on all those bets you make in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 8-game slate here and then talk T-Wolves and Kangs.
Yeah, Magic plus 9.5 at the Sixers, who, no props up yet because maybe they rest somebody against that Orlando team. The Lakers are resting AD and LeBron, so they're plus 9 at Brooklyn after that game opened as a pick'em. Thunder -5 at the pesky OKC Thunder. Totals are 242 there, so it is the highest, but the second highest is Washington -6 at the Spurs tonight. Pistons are plus 8.5 at Dallas. Luke is questionable, though. The other game we break down, Raptors plus 1.5 at Suns, 220 total. The Hawks are plus 2 at Portland. Definitely an intriguing one for player props there. And then we get to Kings -1 at Minnesota. Totals at 237.5 and hasn't really moved. The last meeting here, as you mentioned 2 nights ago, was a 117-110 win for Minnesota. And there's a lot of variance here. These teams are hoisting threes. Minnesota's hoisting a lot of unassisted threes. So will those go in or not? I mean, Ant and D'Lo did go 12 for 16 in that game, and the team shot 46%, while the Kings only hit 9 threes. They shot very poorly. But I think at a larger sample size, what I see is the Kings being overvalued as an offense on the road. And they've gone under 8 of their last 10 road games. On the season, it's a 9 points per game split and a better defensive rating on the road. And their 3-point percentage is what really drops off from 40% at home to 33%. You take that as a sample of 10 games, their last 10 at home versus 10 on the road. We're talking 43% versus 33%. So not as excited to light the beam from afar, I guess, but they've gone under in 8 of their last 10 road games now. Exceptions proving the rule there, but Minnesota is not a team you would expect to go over with right now, especially Rudy Gobert questionable, but he's already got props up, so he's just perpetually questionable at this point. This is Rudy's Wolves now. I mean, with Cat out the last couple months, and it's been about defense, and they're number 2 in defensive rating, their last 8 here. Number 1 limiting fast break points, number 3 limiting opponent 3-point percentage, and I mean, I think it's the kind of the safety of that anchor back there that allows guys like Jaden McDaniels, whoever else is on the wing to just scramble and force the Kings off the line. So I'm not seeing it too much as, the poor variance that they shot 9 for 33 in this last meeting. I don't think that they're going to hit a ton of threes in this game, and that is where they score a high bulk of their points, the Sacramento Kings. So, fewer points. Minnesota's offense is more variance, like I'm saying, because it's a lot of step back threes. And if there's not enough pace, I don't think we're getting to 237. The Kings have slowed it down, playing at a 97.5 pace in their last 8 here. And there's an outlier where Jod sat for Memphis, and it was just like a runaway game, and they rolled at home. Otherwise, they've been like 96, 95, which is not at all what you would expect from this team when you get those totals that they get at home. They've also been number 1 limiting free throw attempts for quite some time now, and it's extremely stark in their last 5, helping them go under recently. And the offense has just been kind of average. I mean, there's not really anything that stands out other than when they hit a bunch of threes, and that usually only happens at home. It doesn't seem to happen against Minnesota. Although this is their first meeting this season. The last 4 meetings, they all went over in Sacramento. They went hella under the one in Minnesota, though. 204 it got to. And that was with the, Fox Halliburton edition of the Kings. Still like to run and gun, though. Depended on those fast break points. Obviously, it was the Wolves without Rudy. So, I mean, I lean under more than anything here. I kind of like Sacramento because we talked about Minnesota on the home, losing that second one. But I don't know. They've been playing pretty well lately, especially on the defensive end, which is why I think I lean on that.
Yeah, I hate picking the T-Wolves this year. I feel like I've sort of missed on them. And I'm starting to understand that. I'm starting to understand that, in these moments where it seems like another team's coming in and rolling and maybe this team has been somewhat inconsistent, like Ant is kind of that guy this year to a degree. Like he's stepped up, at least, since Cat went down. And we talked about this the last time we talked about the T-Wolves, like, yeah, Ant's doing Ant things at this point. The thing that's really interesting to me, about this game is sort of the Gobert and Sabonis, the idea of them matching up and the way that these teams, they haven't been scoring in the paint at like a very high rate, or at least maybe what you would expect for both of these teams with the big men that they have down low. But they are, and they are also hemorrhaging points down low. Both of these teams, out of the Timberwolves, we've talked about it ad nauseum, giving up the second most points in the paint, even over their last 8 games, where like this is a better team than it's been. And like you said, it's a bit more of like a clear like Rudy on defense and on offense with D'Lo as sort of his sidekick, because he's been shooting well. We'll see how long that lasts for D'Lo, but that's at least like somewhat of an identity of this team, and the pace is right there to prove it, right? Like they don't need Rudy to get the break, do anything except for get the break going with his defensive rebounding, which he's also been doing over the course of the last 8 games. But it's just crazy that they're giving up 57.5 points in the paint over their last 8, but the Kings doing the same thing, 55.5. So I'm just kind of like, is it just going to be 2 turnstiles? Like there's no way Rudy's not amped it up to try to, stop Sabonis a bit more down low. Maybe you like a bit more assists for DeMontis in that sense as well. Just thinking about sort of some of the game theory there, but yeah, they both sort of shut down what the others do well, because like I said, they're not scoring that much in the paint. So the fact that these teams suck at defending it isn't really as big of a concern to me. I think I like under more than anything in this one, because I do think the Wolves are going to hang a bit more with this Kings team. I know they just won, but in these sort of back-to-backs against the same team, the T-Wolves are like really, really bad this season, straight up. So I mean, if you look at the recent sort of occurrences of what they've done when they're playing on against the same team twice, they beat Houston, then they lost to them. They beat the Mavs, then they lost to them. They lost to Portland twice, and then they lost they split with San Antonio. So splitting with San Antonio, once again, I mean, not a good team. I don't care if you have Cat or otherwise, like you should be beating them twice in a row at that point when you're at home twice in a row against them. So another sort of twice in a row at home. That was my things with the Wolves this year, is I haven't trusted them to win 2 games in a row. They've been really good, over their last like 6 games or so, where they've won 5 of 6, and I get that. But if you look at the way that they sort of went on streaks before that, it was like a lot of winning and losing in a row, and then a few win streaks and losing streaks in a row. So I'm not confident enough to pick a winner, essentially, is what I'm saying, because Sac has sort of fallen a bit in a way that I wasn't quite expecting to dwindle so much, especially in the way they came out against the Grizzlies, and won that game handily without Ja. I understand, but I mean, they were just unstoppable from deep. And the last 2 have been super disappointing. I think maybe we're seeing a little bit more of a regression to the mean for them in terms of the way that they play, because like that pace, essentially. I don't know if they're trying to play more Mike Brown style defense, but their defensive rating hasn't caught up enough with their sort of dwindling offense in the last 8 games, because I think in part because of that pace. Like if you're going to be a team that scores 125, at home, you got to be able to try to do that on the road if you're not bringing your defense on the road with you, where it's, hasn't been really present anywhere. So I don't trust them, but I trust this game to go under with the way that Minnesota's been, playing defense better, and the way that Sac has been slowing things down so much.
Yeah, and Minnesota does try to play fast still. I mean, they're 7th in pace, but they're loose with the ball. They're 27th in assist-to-turnover ratio in this 8-game sample that we're looking at, and that's just not going to result in high efficiency. Neither is taking, again, a lot of unassisted threes, where they were able to go down in the last one, but I don't think you can depend on that, and that's part of why you see teams come back and beat them the next time, be like, all right, you're not doing anything to counter what we're doing defensively. You're just taking tough shots and making them, because Ant and D'Lo are talented. But, I mean, you're just generally going under is Minnesota. I mean, 20-14 against the Western Conference, 16-10 after a W, and they're kind of rolling right now, so they're in that spot. And 8-4 to the under as home dogs. They have fewer free throw attempts at home, which is something you almost never see. Defensive rating is almost the same, scoring a little bit more, but it's nowhere near what it was last season, where they were the highest scoring team by far at home, just going over at an insane clip. And it's just not the same when you insert Rudy, you take out Cat for the last couple months. Much more defensive-minded team.
Yeah, no timetable right now for Cat's return. So I think maybe I'm not mad about it. I think that this is the year that they should be transitioning to making it Ant Edwards' team. If you watch him play, there's just another level that he's kind of reached in terms of his confidence and ability to get by people into the rim. So hopefully a few more dunks coming as he's increased those as well, with the ability to get to the lane a bit more. So,
and then we've got Raptors plus 1.5 at Suns. Total down to 220.5. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the Raptors had a 3-game roadie, got home for 2. Now this is game 4 of a 7-game roadie, and they have not been very good on the road. But I mean, they've covered when it's a larger spread, but I mean, this is barely a spread at all. And we did, I guess I'll open by talking about our Friday debate, whether the Warriors would pull away from them at home, and they did. Shout out White Dante DiVincenzo with the career-high 11 dimes, giving them that extra spark. But, I mean, that's definitely skewed by the fact that OG Anunoby played 10 minutes and then got hurt again. And their defense is just so much worse without him. I mean, he is top 5 defensive player of the year candidate. They allow 126 without him versus 114 with him. And 3 more 3-pointers per game, which, Phoenix is not the most 3-heavy team, but they do have Cam Johnson back, and he's a vital floor stretcher for them, especially with Jay Crowder sitting out. They need that stretch 4, and with him back for 5 games, they're scoring 5 more points per game. Their offensive rating is 4 points higher in the games he's played. And, of course, CP3 is back as well, which kind of surprisingly makes us throw the brakes on an over here because their pace is 4 possessions slower with CP3, and their defense is much better because, holding people accountable, coach on the floor, whatever you want to say. These teams have tended to go under and played pretty slow when they meet. Toronto's done a good job defending Phoenix, although they haven't had both CP3 and Book for recent meetings. I mean, they don't again tonight, of course. Booker's still out. So gone under in 6 of the last 9 here. It's been bet down a little bit. I would lean towards over, if anything, though, because of Toronto's struggles. On the road defensively, is basically their struggles without OG. But an interesting piece to watch here is the rebounding battle. And with OG out, the guy who's in is Precious Achiuwa, and he's just a monster on the glass. It also seems to have freed up Siakam a little bit to play more of that 3 role if you want to shift Scotty Barnes up to the 4. And Siakam's had a very high usage rate in his last 4. Might look at 23.5 points for him in this matchup, even though, he might see some of Mikal Bridges. I think just the volume and the minutes played will probably get him enough points here. But I think at home, Phoenix is still looking pretty good. The fact that they dropped that game against the Mavs when Luka went out is kind of an outlier. I mean, you would expect them to handle the Mavs without Luka, but it was just kind of a wrench thrown in when he gets hurt 3 minutes in.
Yeah.
And then Spencer Dinwiddie has the game of his life. Weird stuff happens when stars are out in the NBA sometimes. But otherwise, they've been very sharp since CP3 came back and Cam Johnson came back. Ayton been back too. So I think we're going back to them. They're kind of 1-1 since we've been like, take Phoenix at home. They're rounding back into form. And hopefully we get to 2-1 here in terms of that pick.
Yeah, it was a weird game, man. I mean, Luka is a sun that the game orbits around. So as soon as he's out of it, the whole ecosystem is just totally different. They played a zone, did the Suns, in that game that was like a trapping zone where you really only trap Luka, but it's just get the ball out of Luka's hands. That's the game plan. And as soon as he's out, it's like, all right, Spencer Dinwiddie's carving you up in the zone that you have because you're not really treating him the same way, but you're still playing a zone. It was just all weird. Monty Williams hasn't looked that great this season, but whatever. That's a different story. This is a time, I mean, just as an indicator, like the next game where Utah had their game plan ready at home versus Dallas without Luka, knowing ahead of time there's no Luka, they won by 10 pretty handily, and they would have won by more if they didn't let them back a little bit at the end of the game. So that's just a little bit of a testament to how the weirdness that was that Mavs game when Luka, goes out in the first like 3 minutes of the game. So I think the key though here is the injury to OG Anunoby, and I think it's got to be talked about because of the way that this Phoenix team has been playing in the last roughly 6, which is kind of what we're talking about as a barometer. Cam's been back for 5 of those 6. Chris Paul's been back for 4 of those 6. Ayton's been back at least for 3 of those 6 games. So like at least like they're rounding into health more so than they were. And it really is the way that they've been winning and really the way they've been scoring. Same way they always do. Like this team is what it is at this point, especially when Chris Paul is out there. 4th most points per game from 2-point mid-range. Toronto's allowing the 4th highest opponent field goal percentage on the road this season. The 7th most 3-pointers made as well, which is like a big deal with Chris Paul out there finding guys for 3. Mikal Bridges can't really set himself up for 3. Torrey Craig can't really set himself up for 3. Cam Johnson's finally back. So it all adds up to them making the 7th most threes. And without OG Anunoby, we saw what the Dubs did to them, especially in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Where they just made a barrage of threes, and a lot of them assisted as well, which is another problem when OG's out there. The amount of assists that they allow goes way up as well for the Raptors. So, you look at the second chance points is a big thing for Phoenix with Ayton and especially Bridges as well, crashing the glass. But Toronto limits definitely second chance points. They limit points in the paint. They limit points off turnovers because Toronto's been a lot more, what am I trying to say here? They've been a lot more disciplined on the road than they were at the very beginning of the season. And then everything that like Toronto is a little bit worse at on defense is the things that Phoenix doesn't do well. So I'm not really I don't want to bet on a total, I guess is all I'm saying in terms of the way that these teams match up. But I do like Phoenix to be able to handle this team without OG, just like I said, mostly because of the lack of 3-point shooting and the defensive, the perimeter on the defense at this point. I just don't trust them. And the way that, like you said, the way that this game sort of we see this going is just more Chris Paul stuff, a really slow pace, 105 defensive rating over their last 6 with that, roughly 95.5 pace when Paul's out there. So even though Cam Johnson's back, it opens up the offense a ton, gives you a big rebounding scorer who can shoot. The defense and the discipline that they've been playing in the half court and with the slow pace is really what I look at as like the defining factor of this game. And the fact that Toronto is the worst half court offense, we'll say it again, in the league because of that lack of 3-point shooting. Yeah, they're going to need Precious Achiuwa to get like 10 second chance points on his own really to have a chance in this one. So I just think that the sort of need, the things that Toronto needs to do to win is a lot more extreme at this point because of the lack of ways that they have to score, especially against one of the best half-court defenses in the league that they are every season now in the Suns.
Yeah, and the Suns are 5th denying fast break points, always key with the Raptors. Limiting turnovers is always key as well, and with Chris Paul out there, you don't expect as many turnovers. Yeah, you said, I mean, the Raptors are bad in these margins, even with OG in terms of giving up assisted field goals, in terms of giving up 2-point percentage. You saw the Warriors, with their half-court offense kind of carve them up. A defensive rating of 121 or higher in 5 of the last 7 road games here for the Raptors. So I think there's something to be said for Phoenix going over their team total here and not necessarily trusting the Raptors as much. But I think there's a lot of ways to exploit that defense, especially, I talk about what playing Precious might do to open things up for Siakam on offense, but then you're just a little bit too big, I think, and a little bit too slow against the Suns on the other end. And CP3 knows how to identify those matchups and exploit them.
Yeah, it's all pointing towards Suns at this point, especially with their ability to game plan for this team playing with who they know who's in the lineup at this point for Toronto, as opposed to the way that weird Mavs game went. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump into your first NBA play-up prop for tonight.
Yeah, so Kyrie and the Nets are hosting the Lakers, but LeBron is not playing. And this is kind of a good situation for Kyrie to finally ball out against LeBron, who's, sunned him out of Cleveland, if you will, kind of pushed him out with that attitude and then pretty much guarded and handled him and with help from his teammates since they've played since. Kyrie's high water mark is 30 against LeBron in 2019. Of course, the Lakers also had AD and other guys patrolling the rim in those last couple meetings against the Lakers for Kyrie, and AD is also resting tonight, and the Lakers defense is pretty terrible. So with those two guys out, I might also look at Russell Westbrook PRA. I don't think he's announced in yet. So it's like somebody's going to keep this game relatively close, though. I think I still take the Lakers +9. I don't care who's you're trotting out there. I don't think the Brooklyn Nets are beating anybody by 10 right now if there are NBA players on the floor. And because they need Kyrie to be a superhero without KD, and he's come through thus far in his last 37.5 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. And in 2 home games, 36, 5.5, 7.5. So the 12.5 rebounds assist at even money is actually intriguing because 31.5 points is where you have to go to get even odds at FanDuel. I think that's quite possible. I think it's going to be kind of a watch me from the bench, LeBron. He's going to have a little more juice in this. And it's just a great matchup. The Lakers are allowing the most points to point guards in the last 14 days here. Kyrie's got an absurd usage rate and great efficiency, and he's playing about 40 minutes per game since KD went down. Ben Simmons might also be out tonight. TJ Warren is out, so it's just going to be another situation where Jacque Vaughn has to ride Kyrie as long as he can.
Yeah, I'm never going to tell you not right now to take Kyrie points, but I would also say some Nick Claxton stuff in there. He's been having a really solid roughly like 7 games or so far, the last 7 especially, and getting all of those stocks and blocks and rebounds. So I think there's some stats there for him as well when you're missing AD and then he gets to go up against a much slower footed Thomas Bryant in that one. But either way, like Kyrie points right now, he's averaging 37. You got to get that prop very, very high for anyone to even consider an under for him right now in a game that should be even more up and down. If it's a Russ Westbrook led LA team for like 40 minutes or so. So we'll see there. Keldon Johnson is the next one up here for us. He's got a pretty high prop for him. It's about as high as we've seen this season, 23.5 points. And then you could add the rebounds in there, gets you 28.5, a little bit better odds when you add the rebounds. But, Vassell is still out. And so without Vassell, he's at about 24.5 points a game this season for Keldon versus 20 when Vassell's in there. And we're talking about him having about 120 offensive rating versus 100 when he's really the focal point of the offense, which is insane how much more efficient he is with Vassell out. In his last 6, about 26 a game and 5 boards. And he's only had about a 26.5% usage rate in that time. But he's, like we've been saying, very, very efficient without Vassell, 51, 36, 83 splits. And in 3 home games during that span there over the last 6, Nate, 31 a game and 6 rebounds with a 28% usage. Still not as that high for someone averaging 31 points a game to just have a 28% usage. And his last meeting versus the Wizards, 32, 7, and 2 in 46 minutes. But that was a double overtime game that got to 310 points. This one is at 242.5 at this point for the total. So just come on. If there's going to be anywhere close to that, who do you think is doing the bulk of the scoring for the Spurs at that point? So 23.5 points still feels like a really good bet when he's been averaging the 31 over his last 3 home games.
Yeah, the usage is never going to be that high for a guy on the Spurs, right? Especially the way they are playing now, which is just to rotate the ball and get good shots. But Johnson, now that he's kind of playing within that offense, maybe he was forcing it a little bit a couple months ago when he had really poor efficiency. He's been knocking them down, and he is the guy they want to end possessions with. I think you do want to tack on the rebounds here because of the total, because of the expected pace when the Spurs are at home, and the Wizards, not always a reliable offensive team, but I think we'll just be going up and down. There'll be good rebounding opportunities. So this Portland-Atlanta game is at a 237 total as well. I would look at the over there. I would also look at Atlanta because Portland is just falling and they can't get up. And Trae Young is a guy who knows how to exploit what Portland does poorly on defense. 8 career games against Portland, 33 points per game on 37% usage. Also 11 assists. His last 2 have just been insane. 56 and 46, 14 dimes, 12 dimes. Shot 12 for 26 from 3 and a perfect 26 for 26 at the line. So whatever juice he feels in this matchup definitely hones him in, and he likes playing at Portland. So I think 36.5 points assists. We go with this a lot with Trey, and he's usually right around there. And the odds aren't great, minus 120. I think you want to take 3 threes at plus 158 at FanDuel if it's still up with that much juice. It has that much juice because he's just 3 for 17 from deep in his last 4 here. But still, you love to see the usage, 35.5%. He's still averaging 27.5 points, 11.5 assists, so he is getting over that if you want to go with the safer prop there. And getting to the line, and I believe Josh Hart and Nurkic are questionable right now for Portland. They're just struggling on both ends. And interestingly, the home road splits lately for Trey, much less usage on the road, but still scoring the same amount because he's shooting 38% from 3 versus 21% at home. Also a couple more dime on the road. But I think, you look for him to hit those threes and be the crowd silencer that he loves to be.
Yeah, it's like you said, they're slipping and just falling out there in Portland right now, and I think Trey can probably smell some blood, especially against that backcourt that is just another sort of bad defensive backcourt of Dame and Anthony Simons. So plenty for Trey to sort of take advantage of there, and I think that the dimes will also be a plenty. So not sure what's going on with Portland at this point, but there's no defense there, and there's been a huge lack of offense at this point outside of Dame. So either way, Trey Young to continue to get his. They've looked a lot better over the last 5 or 6. So let's finish things off. We've got one here where we're targeting the Magic against Philly. I do think it's a good opportunity for Paolo in this one to be able to get his prop at 18.5 points for the Magic. Maybe no Embiid, and even if he is there, I think we can probably expect to see a lot more Montrezl Harrell playing center throughout the game to give him some time to rest his foot after just going completely off against Jokic. But Paolo, I think you can do the 18.5 points. You can add in 6 rebounds for him, 24.5 points and rebounds combined. I kind of just like the points at this point for him. I think there are going to be a lot of points in this game. Not only, it has Philly just been allowing a ton of points over the last 8 to 10 games or so, where the games they're giving up about 122 points with 123 defensive rating, also giving up the highest opponent field goal percentage from 2-point at about 53.5% to their opponent, and they're vulnerable at that power forward position. I mean, PJ Tucker, say what you want about his aggressiveness, is not a solid one-on-one defender anymore, and definitely he's not going to be able to hang with the much taller and better Paolo, who's been getting a lot of points from the mid-range as well, allowing about 26 a game to opposing power forwards over the course of the last couple weeks are the 76ers, so I think Paolo's a good bet here. I will just throw out one other one, which is Klay Thompson's prop does not rise. It continues to stay at 21.5 points for Klay, who's averaging 27 over his last 10. He's a lot better at home, but in his last 2 on the road, he's averaging 25 after scoring 24 and 26 points there. After having a few bad games on the road in a row, he's still at the 25 to 27 points a game. If you're going to say he needs 21 or 22 to get his prop, I'm going to go ahead and take it in a game that'll probably have points as well in OKC.
Yeah, but beware the Thunder, who are still, I think, top 5 defensive rating in the last month or so. I think they'll have something in store for Steph and Klay, and that game will go under 242. We'll see. I mean, this game should go over. I don't think, you talk about PJ Tucker and defensive intensity. I don't think the Sixers are going to bring any intensity against Orlando. They're just going to continue to just say all right, we'll just outscore you. And they've gone over in 16 of their last 19. So I think there's a lot of guys to take on the Magic. I think this is a great bounce back spot for Paolo after 2 bad games against tough Miami and Chicago defenses.
Yeah, no, fully agree with that. And I do like Paolo better than Klay. I just had to throw it out there that they continue to keep his prop super low. And he'll probably regress back down to the low 20s as his average anyway. So maybe that's, like you said, OKC, I do like them a bit more in that game and under so many points that they have. But that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us each and every weekday this season. And until we see you next, happy betting.